The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 towards their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up. Draft, fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA! Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge, and Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow!
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Leto got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is a key to lead. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, it's Dante Fowler who is able to get to Breeze. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
All right, guys, joining us on the podcast, we have JB Long, who was basically, just on our intro. How's it going, JB? Thanks so much for coming on.
Jake, it's nice to be back speaking with you, and Alexis, glad to be introduced.
Yeah, for sure. So excited to talk to you, and just to get right into it and kick it off, I just want to know, what was the experience of calling the Super Bowl like? I mean, was that incredible?
It was incredible. However, I have posed a rhetorical question, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, did it really fall? If your team goes to the Super Bowl but doesn't score a touchdown, did you really go to the Super Bowl? That was somewhat my emotional experience was like, being there and experiencing the bitter frustration of how it ended. But now, a few months removed from it, I certainly look back fondly on what the organization was able to do in that 2-week window, the great job that the city of Atlanta did for that Super Bowl. And I wish it would have turned out differently. But I know that it's just kind of the most recent chapter in what I think will be a very long and successful era of Sean McVay coaching and Jared Goff quarterbacking and Aaron Donald sacking quarterbacks and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, and that goes right into what was going to be my next question is where do you feel the Rams stand heading into this upcoming season? I know there's a lot of talk, of course, there's a lot of talk, about the Super Bowl hangover. And I can tell you right now, the Downtown Rams podcast, Alexis and I don't really believe that's going to happen. And a lot of, people we've had on here don't believe that's going to happen. So I'd imagine you're probably along in that boat. But where do you see this team heading into 2019?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether or not they do get back to the postseason, much less the Super Bowl, will have more to do with so many other factors and far less to do with any perceived or real Super Bowl hangover. I mean, I think as much or more than any team and coaching staff in professional football, I think Sean McVay and his group do a great job of, lightening them the load in terms of practice time whenever possible. And that was apparent again during OTAs and minicamp, which, I think saw just one day on the field and the other 2 days bagged essentially. And I think that's one way in which the coaches can get some of that time back for their families and for themselves to recharge. And likewise for the players that were a part of the 2018 Rams to feel like there was the appropriate gap, the amount of time they need to rest and recover for the challenge that lies ahead. And I think the Rams are well positioned. I think they're off season, while perhaps not as flashy as the one season ago, was nonetheless effective. And I like some of the pieces that they've added to supplement the existing group, be it through free agency or the draft. And I'm excited about what the opportunity holds in front of them. Now, the other 3 teams in the division, I think, undoubtedly got better. And in that sense, the initial challenge will be more difficult. And, you look back at all the things that have gone the Rams' way in the last 2 years under Sean McVay, it would be naive to think that they are immediately repeatable. And whether that be, individuals having career seasons or the turnover margin breaking in your favor or the injury report being as clean as it has been for the better part of really 3 seasons now, I'm not going to go down that road and say that you can just repeat the process and all will come out the same.
Exactly. And, you mentioned how the other teams in our division got better, which is something that, I've been saying as well. I thought that the other NFC West teams had pretty good drafts this year in free agency. But what were your thoughts on the Rams draft class this year?
No, I think it's a continuation of a vision and a plan that's been put in place ever since this new coaching staff locked in with Les Snead and his group. And I think they executed it very well, be it drafting down to create more draft capital or moving up when necessary to pounce on a prospect like Darrell Henderson, who I think has a role on this team right from the jump. At some point, it would be nice to draft in the first round, of course, but I don't look forward to that pick being any higher than 31 or 32 anytime in the near future. So I think you have to take the good with the bad in terms of what you have available in the draft each April. But more, I think, pertinently is the types of players you're attracting year after year, seemingly now in free agency, be it Eric Weddle or Clay Matthews and Dominican Sue in a previous year. I think one of the reasons why I might brush aside the Super Bowl hangover that you touched on previously is I still sense a great feeling of urgency in this group. For those who were here last year, it's because they didn't quite complete the task. And for those who are new, it's because they're seeking a ring maybe in their last go round, whether it's Whitworth continuing his career, deciding not to retire. The two players in free agency I mentioned, Aqib Talib, could this be his last go round? And then you add in all the players who might be performing for generational contracts in terms of the money that they could acquire for themselves and their loved ones, whether it's John Johnson or Marcus Peters. The list goes on and on. I think this is just a really pivotal year, both for the franchise collectively and for the individuals that make up the team.
Yeah, I think looking at this team, there's a lot of moving parts going on. While they have established their kind of base, for instance, their base defense, their offense, there are definitely some moving parts. But one part that I don't think is going to be moving anytime soon is the quarterback position. And Jared Goff to me showed so much growth last year, as opposed to the first 2 years. And the second year was a huge leap from, his rookie year, which, that wasn't all his fault. But, I want to know, JB, and I've seen you on Twitter, back in number 16. And I mean, obviously, you always come, right to the platform with, your patented stats and, things to back it up. I mean, you always do. But where do you have Jared Goff if you were to rank him out of all the quarterbacks in the league?
I'm not sure I could just on the spot spit back a number to you, like 8, for instance. But, I think since tier making has been a popular theme this offseason, certainly we are living in a golden age of quarterback in the National Football League, and there are first ballot Hall of Famers that continue their careers into 2019 that are rightly in a class of their own. And while Jared Goff, for instance, has defeated Drew Brees head-to-head and in some instances outplayed him, I'm not going to put him anywhere close to the Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees tier. That being said, I think there's that next group in which he belongs, and that's the group that has Patrick Mahomes in it coming off an MVP season, that has Carson Wentz's draft classman coming off a contract extension, that has Dak Prescott, who's right there with him. And to me, that's more than just a group that you can win with. That's more than just a serviceable NFL quarterback. It's someone who's deserving of the Pro Bowl accolades he's earned in his 2 full seasons to this point. And Jared will always have to fight the perception battle, being a number 1 overall pick and starting 0-7, and some of the numbers and the results that were displayed back in 2016. But that's okay, because one of the things that I love about Jared, and I know his coaching staff and the front office love about him too, is he's been through that before, and twice now, once at Cal and once in Los Angeles, he's come out the other side a better quarterback and a better person. So I think this franchise is in great hands. And you know how I feel about the system quarterback conversation with respect to McVay, Goff, and really any head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback conversation in football. You know what? If Jared is a product of the system he plays in and the coach who's in his headset, so be it. I don't think any of us see that relationship ending anytime soon, and let's make sure we keep it that way.
Who do you think breaks out this year for the Rams?
That's a very good question. On offense, to me, it has to be Gerald Everett. When I think about the next iteration of this Rams offense, you know, if last year was 2.0 and it was layering in Brandon Cooks and creating a vertical threat that also could put the jet sweep in motion. And I think this year it's maybe having a tight end who's more detached as a number one receiver to a side and can create mismatches. Whether or not we see two back looks with Henderson and Gurley could be another wrinkle. But I think, you know, as a leading pick in his draft class, Gerald Everett has shown flashes of being ready for that assignment, being ready for that workload. And, you know, if OTAs were any indication, I think he's going to have that opportunity in front of him. And he has another, I think, bona fide NFL tight end in Tyler Higbee at his side. So I would start with that position, and especially Gerald in particular on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, you know, Micah Kaiser is a fresh face that probably warrants mention. I would go John Johnson, except I think to those of us who follow this franchise day in and day out, we already know that he's a Pro Bowl caliber player, even if he hasn't been rewarded as such just yet. Morgan Fox, I think, is going to get a lot of opportunities in the month of August and maybe even into September to prove himself worthy of a spot in the rotation. So that's probably some of the names that I would throw out there. And then nose would be another one, whether it's Greg Gaines or Sebastian Joseph Day. Obviously, there's a role to replace there. And when they went up and got Gaines, I think a lot of us by default said, okay, there's your base nose tackle. But from everything we heard during the last, say, month of minicamp and OTAs, it seems like Sebastian Joseph Day got the message and saw that there was another viable option behind him in the draft class, and he has certainly elevated his game as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for Sebastian Joseph Day. I'm excited for Gerald Everett. I think, you know, one of the really defining moments of Gerald Everett's career was that game against Kansas City. I mean, that's really the go-ahead touchdown there, and I know other things happened, but you know, that was put right on the money by Goff. And I mean, Everett had to kind of tiptoe down the sidelines and stay in bounds and, you know, get that touchdown. And, you know, bottom line is, I can tell you right now, you could think, well, you know, the Rams would have scored anyway. I remember the Rams lost the game against the Redskins in 2017 because Gerald Everett didn't get in the end zone. So I definitely wouldn't put that past him. I think, you know, he had a huge game that game, and you know, I think he's coming on strong. I think the tight end position is going to need that young talent to really shoot themselves up this upcoming year. I think now you lose somebody like Gronkowski, you know, the tight end crop. We talked about how rich it is at quarterback. It's not so rich at tight end. So I think you're going to have guys like Gerald Everett step up. You know, with Sebastian Joseph Day, it's like you said, you know, now you bring in Greg Gaines and, you know, there's still, you know, Tanzel Smart still there. You know, it's there's still going to be some pressure warranted on him. So he needs to step up, of course. And, you know, I want to get your thoughts. You know, you mentioned a guy from last year's draft. I want to get your thoughts on this year's draft. I know you talked a little bit about Darrell Henderson, who is probably my favorite in this draft. I can't even believe the Rams got him. He was my number one running back in this class, so pretty big there. But you know, when you look at guys like, say, like, you know, Taylor Rapp, you know, Greg Gaines, Nick Scott, Dakota Allen. I mean, like, you know, what do you see with this draft? And I mean, if you could even put a number on it. How many starters do you think come out of this crop? And I'm not just talking about this year, but, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, you know, we've touched on Henderson already. I think he will get opportunities, be it next year or in his future, that resemble that of a starting running back. We all know who the starting running back on this particular team is. But flipping sides and starting with Rapp, who I had the privilege of covering during his college career at Washington, and my work with the Pac-12, and I would say the same thing for Greg Gaines. Under Chris Peterson, that program has produced pro-ready players, especially on the defensive side of the football. And I think Rapp and Gaines are two prime examples of exactly why, in terms of what they bring in skill set and also scheme, understanding, mentality. And Rapp, to me, is fascinating because he walks into what I think is an ideal situation at the safety position in Los Angeles. He won't be asked to do too much initially, let's hope. I think there are proven safeties there who have secured their spot and then some. And I also think what's intriguing about his role is how much three safety defense the Rams played last year and certainly project to again in 2019. Marquis Christian got a lot of that role in the dime look last year. I think Rapp, with his contributions on special teams, stands to be active on game day as a member of the 46 and therefore could also get some early opportunities on defense. When you think about how versatile that group is in terms of being able to play down in the box or center field, almost to a man, they can cover a tight end. They can stuff the run. And I think Rapp will inherit the reins to those roles more and more as his career goes on. To me, he's a surefire NFL starter. Gaines, a nose and base defense for the future. Absolutely. I'm not too hung up on the Rams improving their run defense necessarily. I think that's more of a statistical story than a win-loss impactful one, but he can help in that regard. Absolutely. And then I think I'll circle back to offense to finish my long-winded answer here, and that is the offensive linemen that they drafted. And just like we saw with Noteboom and Allen kind of getting that redshirt year, they both got their feet wet but weren't asked to be starters immediately. You can see the plan in place for the future with Bobby Evans and David Edwards as well. And under the tutelage of Aaron Cromer, I would not at all be surprised to see them assume starting roles down the line for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to touch back on the defense a little bit, will Aaron Donald break the sack record in 2019?
It's a great question. I obviously you have to say no if you're playing the odds. Is he capable
Right.
of it? Absolutely. Is he determined to have 2018 not go down as his career best season? 100%. I mean, I think what's so enjoyable about covering Aaron Donald is he can have a season like he did and not change his process one bit. And what strikes me is that Donald is not playing the guard across from him. He's not playing the team that shows up on Sunday. He's not playing the other defensive tackles in the National Football League for All-Pro honors or Defensive Player of the Year honors. He's playing the Hall of Fame. And I think you can make a very strong case that he's there already, were he not to play another down. But assuming he plays for several more years, plays out this contract and hopefully well beyond it, he's going to go down as one of the best to have ever done it at his position or on the defensive side of the football. And from what I can tell, being around Aaron now for the better part of 3 years, that's how he frames every rep, every weight lift, every knife fight, and certainly every snap in the National Football League.
Knife fight, I like that. No, I completely agree. I mean, Aaron Donald is a Hall of Fame talent. I mean, this is somebody he could retire as the greatest ever. I think right now, somehow, even though the quarterback position is so valuable, like I'm doing my DTR 100. It's the same thing as like the NFL 100, but I rank the 1 to 100 guys. And last year I had Donald at 2 and Aaron Rodgers at 1. I think this year I'm putting Aaron Rodgers lower, and I'm putting Aaron Donald at 1. I just really, when you look at the rest of the league, I mean, there are so many, fantastic players, and Patrick Mahomes definitely has an argument. But Donald's been doing this since he entered the league, and he's been doing this for a while. And furthermore, there was a guy who was overshadowing him on a team that was winning. So now that the Rams are finally winning, people are starting to finally, tune in and see what this guy's all about. And that guy that, of course, was overshadowing him was J.J. Watt, because he had 20.5 sacks as well. But I think people forget the type of role he's played. I mean, he's the majority of Watt's career. Well, actually, Watt in general, he's just an edge guy. He's an edge defender. Aaron Donald plays in the interior. Whether this is a 3-4 defense or not, his whole career he's played in the interior. They move him outside. I mean, he will occasionally get those edge reps, but for the most part, that's what makes him just unbelievable, is that there's never been an interior lineman really like him. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing. And I mean, JB, it sounds crazy, but I do think he's going to end up breaking the record. I mean, I think he was so close last year, and he didn't even get a sack within the first 4 games. And
yeah, I mean, that's to his benefit, right? Like, if you're going to take the over on 20.5, that would be the big reason why. But I think we could both just as easily point to the 4-sack performance at San Francisco and acknowledge that in all likelihood, Aaron could have a Hall of Fame career for another 6 years and not catch another one of those necessarily, and through no fault of his own. What I'm as interested, or maybe more interested in terms of individual accomplishments for the upcoming season, is can he three-peat as Defensive Player of the Year? Because since you mentioned Watt, only JJ and LT have gone even back-to-back, and they're also the only 3-time winners of the award. So to my previous point about I think he already has Hall of Fame credentials, if we were to do it 3 years in a row, I think you can start fitting him for that gold jacket.
Yeah, the weird thing with that, JB, is, it's kind of like Coach of the Year. I mean, you can't just give it to Belichick every year. Does it eventually become that type of award where you just can't give it to Aaron Donald because, well, it's obvious?
That's an interesting question, and he may run up against some of that this year. It obviously depends what, the likes of a Khalil Mack might do, or if there's a defensive back who puts up a big interception total or something along those lines. But I think Aaron's performance is bolstered and enhanced by us being in the Pro Football Focus era and being able to maybe quantify some of the things that he does beyond just stacking quarterbacks. So that's to his credit, and I think that's a productive force in his favor. And I also think that in the short passing game era that we play through currently, to have a rusher, over between the guards as opposed to on the edge. I mean, I think a lot of, the Rams can get better on the edge. Can they get more production from the edge? Absolutely. But it's tough to go around a tackle and beat Aaron Donald to the quarterback if you're Dante Fowler. You know what I mean? So, I think in terms of the value that he provides, it is so perfectly attuned to the current state of defensive and professional football that he's one of a kind.
I would definitely agree with that. I've never seen anything like him. But JB, really appreciate you coming on. It's going to be a fun season. Would love to be able to get you on before the season starts, but if not, we'll try and find some time during the season. Good luck with everything. Take some time, enjoy yourself. I mean, you're always grinding, and we appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, and Jake, love what you do, and Alexis, a belated welcome to the team, and keep it up. And certainly, if you would like to circle back during training camp, I would be happy to do so. But you're right, I'm going to go off the grid for the better part of the next month or so.
Well, you definitely earned it. So you enjoy yourself, and we'll talk soon, man.
Take care.
Yep. Thanks, JB.
Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Once again, this is brought to you by, of course, Draft, but it's also brought to you by SiteGround. And if you haven't heard of SiteGround, before you guys go, you need to check SiteGround out. Go to siteground.com/go/DTR today and get their special $5.95 per month price. SiteGround is the perfect web host that you've been looking for. You want a simple, easy transition to WordPress? Trust me, look at downtownrams.com for reference. That was all done on SiteGround. So once again, siteground.com/go/DTR, $5.95 per month. Get started on your website today.